Hi, everybody. So this is Chapter 5, Infection Control. Um, this will be by far the hardest chapter that you guys will have to deal with. Um, it has a lot of information, and these days, of course, with everything that's been going on, it's really important that we understand everything we can about, the infection control. This is our health and safety class. Um, so it's really important that for just with regular everyday dealing with clients and different things that people come in with, and now dealing with, obviously the pandemic, um, being safe is more important than ever. So infection control is a really important part of our curriculum. And that being said, let's get started. So our lesson objectives are list the 16 categories of information required on the safety data sheets, understand the laws and rules and the difference between them, list the types and classifications of bacteria, define bloodborne pathogens and explain how they are transmitted, explain the difference between cleaning, disinfecting, and sterilizing, list the type of disinfectants and the steps to use them properly, define standard precautions, and list your responsibilities as a salon professional. So why do we study infection control? Well, it's really important to be knowledgeable, successful, and responsible professional. You're required to understand all the types of illnesses that you could encounter at work. You need to understand the basics of cleaning and disinfecting, all the products, how to use them, and keep them in a safe environment. Understand and practice the proper infection control with the federal and provincial laws to safeguard yourself. So that being said, this book is an American textbook, our Milady textbook. So a lot of the things you'll see in here are based on the American standards. We do go a little bit deeper into the Canadian side of things, but for the purposes of this chapter, the test, all that stuff, the information that we give is more American based. Just be aware of that. Respecting the chemicals used in cleaning and disinfecting by reading the labels and following their instructions. The term clean is defined as a mechanical process. So if you think of cleaning, soap and water and the actual, removing of the soil off of an object, that is considered cleaning it. You want to make sure that you're getting any type of debris, whether it be, when you're using your tools, any type of, hair, anything like that. That's called cleaning it, is to actually wash it with soap and water. The term sanitizing is a chemical process for reducing the number of disease-causing germs on a clean surface to a safe level. And disinfection is defined as a chemical process that uses specific products to destroy harmful organisms on environmental surfaces. Really important that you understand the difference between those. So there's many different agencies that regulate the practice of cosmetology, and guidelines are set in every sense for um, keeping people safe and understanding what the protocols and procedures are. So the OSHA was created as part of the U.S. Development of Labor to regulate and enforce safety and health standards in the workplace. An SDS is a safety data sheet, which replaces the MSDS and is required that all manufacturers supply an SDS for all chemical products. So anywhere that you work, even in our classroom, we have a book that contains an SDS sheet for everything that we use in the salon. And it's available at any time for any of the students to look at. So it's really important that you understand how to read these pages, where those pages are kept, and that anything that you need in regards to, maybe a spill or a contamination or anything like that, that you need to understand how all those chemicals work. And an EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, registers all type of disinfectants sold and used in Canada and the US. So a safety data sheet has 16 points on it. So the identification of preparation and the supplier, which means who made it and where it came from. The composition, meaning what's in it. Any hazards. So if it's flammable, if it's under pressure, those kinds of things. The first aid measures. So if it's to get on your skin, in your eyes, it explains to you how to deal with that, whether to wash it with water, if you need to put baking soda on it, all those kinds of things, depending on. Firefighting measures, same thing. So if it's something that can be explosive or flammable, what would you use if it caught on fire? What would you use? Would it be a chemical or would it be water? Accidental release measures, meaning that if for some reason the chemical in the container was released, what you should do. Handling and storage, meaning can it be shipped in the air? A lot of hazardous materials are not allowed to be shipped through the air. They have to go via ground because they have an explosive tendency. So they don't want to put those obviously in an airplane that could, catch fire, explode. And storage. You have to keep a lot of these things in specific storage so that if there was ever any type of an incident, there's a containment. Exposure controls and personal protection, meaning that if you're using such product, they usually give you instructions on how to use it. Do you need safety gloves? Do you need eye protection? Do you need, full gown to make sure? Do you need something to cover your face so that you don't breathe in the vapors? All those kinds of things. Physical and chemical properties, meaning what the actual substance is. Is it a liquid? Is it a vapor? Is it a gas? Is it a solid? And what chemicals are in there to make it that way? Stability and reactivity, meaning is it stable or is it something that if it's shook the wrong way that it's can be explosive, or if it's in a heated room, will it explode? Things like that. Toxicology information, meaning if it's ingested, what you need to do to deal with that. Ecological information, again, if it spills in the environment, what kind of issues will you have if on an environmental standpoint. Disposal considerations, meaning if you have to get rid of it, how do you do that? How do you dispose of it? Transport information, again, how this product or chemical, how you are allowed to transport it. Can you go by car? Can you go by train? Can you go by airplane? Regulatory information, meaning that there's some places that you are not able to use this product, or some people that are not allowed to use this product. And number 16, any other relevant information. So if there's anything that doesn't fall under the first 15 that they feel is important that you need to understand, then it's in there. On the other side, there's an actual pictogram of what everything means. I don't know if you can see it with my little picture there, but the actual pictogram is also in your textbook under the chapter 5. So rules versus regulations. Again, important to understand that there is a difference. So the rules are guidelines for conduct and action, where regulations are regulatory through the government and have the force of law. Rules can be enforced, but laws are issued by an executive authorities of the government. So basically you can follow the rules, but there's not as much, like the rules are what you have to follow basically. As an example, follow the rules in class. But the laws, if you break the laws, you rob a bank or something like that, then you go to jail. There's a difference. And how to tell the difference, what you can and cannot do. Here's a little example on the side. about a parent school school club. Kind of gives a good example of a visual of the difference. So moving on to disinfectants. So disinfectants are chemical products that destroy most bacteria, excluding spores, including fungi and viruses on surfaces. There are two types used in the salon. So there's a hospital grade disinfectant. They're effective enough to be used in a hospital setting, but are effective for cleaning blood and bodily fluids. Using it in a salon environment, if we do deal with bodily fluids and at sometimes blood if you cut your finger or if you, God forbid, you cut a client, there is the possibility of blood and bodily fluids. And then tuberculocidal disinfectants are proven to kill the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, in addition to the pathogens destroyed in a hospital disinfectant. It's just basically a little bit of a higher grade disinfectant. So that would be something that we would use more on things that actually, touch our clients and could cut clients. Like I use the clipper side spray when I clean my clippers, and it has tuberculocidal disinfecting on it, which means if I was to ever use it on a client that had, tuberculosis, then when I clean it, like I clean it as the mechanical part where I clean it, get all the hair and everything off it, and then I spray it, which means I'm killing everything on it, basically almost to the level of hospital grade. So there's high level disinfectants, which are, well above what it is that we need to use in the salon. Intermediate level disinfectants, which are tuberculocidal activity but not sporicidal. And then low level disinfectants, they are a wide range of activity against microorganisms, but no sporicidal or tuberculocidal. That being said, low level disinfectants being like a Windex. Intermediate level disinfectants would be like the RTU that we use in the classroom. Principles of infection. So infection control refers to the methods used to eliminate or reduce the transmission of infectious organisms. There are 4 types of potentially harmful organisms. Bacteria. So when you think of bacteria, you think of things getting into a cod or whatever. So it's important to understand that there is a one-cell organism that have both plant and animal characteristics. Some bacteria are harmful and some are harmless. Bacteria can exist anywhere, on the skin, in the water, in the air, pretty much anywhere, but they can only be seen with a microscope. So non-pathogenic are helpful or harmless. So if you think of non-pathogenic or helpful bacteria, you think of, when you take a probiotic for your belly, and it's supposed to be the good bacteria in your belly that helps metabolize food and help with your immune system. Pathogenic are the harmful and disease-causing when they get into, into the tissue. So if you have like a cut on your finger and you get the pathogenic bacteria in there because you haven't cleaned it properly, that's where you get the infection. Classifications of pathogenic bacteria. So there's cocci, the round-shaped bacteria that appears singly or in groups. Staphylococci are pus-forming bacteria that grow in clusters, and they cause abscesses, pustules, and boils. So if you think of a staph infection, if you've ever heard of people having, catching a staph infection, that's what that is. It's basically a pathogenic bacteria that gets into the skin through, who knows how. Could be a lot of people get them in a hospital from having surgery or things like that. And you heard people have a staph infection. That's what that means. And a streptococci are pus-forming bacteria arranged in curved lines resembling beads. They cause strep throat and blood poisoning. Diplococci are spherical bacteria that grow in pairs and cause diseases like pneumonia. And Bacilli are short, rod-shaped bacteria, and Spirella are corkscrew-shaped, and they can cause syphilis and Lyme disease. So here's a good picture of what the shapes of the bacteria look like. There's also a good picture of them in chapter 5 in your textbook of, kind of the shape of them. So bacterial infections. When you get a bacterial infection, of course, one of the first things that you notice is inflammation. So that's how your body reacts to an injury or irritation or infection. And basically the area that you've injured, say you have a cut on your finger, the first thing you notice is it gets red, it's hot, it's painful, could be some swelling. That's your first indication that you have a bit of a bacterial infection. A local infection could be a pimple or an abscess. It's the sign of infection, and pus is the fluid byproduct that contains the bacteria. A contagious disease is or communicable, basically what COVID is. It spreads from one person to another by direct or indirect contact, like the common cold or COVID. MRSA, so methicillin-resistant staphylococcus, is an example of a staph infection. It presents in like a pimple-type rash. It's really difficult to cure. It can actually become systemic and cause death if it's not treated properly. A staph infection is actually a really, really dangerous bacterial infection because it gets into your blood. So viruses. A virus is a parasitic submicroscopic particle that infects the cells of biological organisms. They're capable of taking over the host cells and reproductive function. So COVID stands for coronavirus, so meaning it's a virus. So if you think of it in a virus in that respect, you think of, being exposed to the virus, having it get into your system, and then those cells start taking over your own cells, which means your own healthy cells are not able to reproduce. So that's in turn what makes you sick. So viruses can live and reproduce only by taking other cells and becoming a part of them, while bacteria can live and reproduce on their own. Viruses are not affected by antibiotics, which is why coronavirus is difficult to control. They are hard to kill without harming the body's own cells. Where available, vaccinations can prevent viruses. So on that note, that's kind of where they're coming from when they're talking about getting the vaccine for coronavirus, hoping to prevent other people from getting it. That's basically the way that they're hoping to be able to get everything under control. So, talking about bloodborne pathogens, so there's a couple of different ways of looking at things and a couple different things. So a biofilm are colonies of microorganisms that adhere to environmental surfaces as well as the human body. They create a sticky protective coating that cements them together and is hard to penetrate and can keep the body in chronic inflammation. So biofilm is one of those really dangerous things that you find that was really a big problem a few years ago in like nail salons, because they were using those, foot baths with the massage or with the whirlpool in it. And the problem is that when they were draining it out, they weren't cleaning the jets in between. So the last persons, if they had any type of, nail fungus or any issues with any type of infection or anything on their feet or legs that water had touched, that water goes into that whirlpool system. And if that isn't cleaned between each customer, when you put the next person there and fill that again with warm water, you're basically running it through those jets and running that bacteria into the water of the next person. So it's really hard to clean inside those pipes. So now, as you know, when you go to a nail salon or anything to have a pedicure, they put a cover over that bath so that the water is for one person only. So you don't end up with having that issue of, having the biofilm, which is actually really, really dangerous. Bloodborne pathogens are disease-causing microorganisms that are carried in the body by blood or your bodily fluids, such as hepatitis or HIV. You can get this from hair cutting, if you cut your finger or cut them, burns from, if you burn your finger with your flat iron or your curling iron, waxing, shaving, anywhere that the skin is broken, you're inviting, you know, um, you're inviting bacteria to get in there. Fungi are single-celled. They grow in irregular masses like a mold or a mildew or a yeast. So if you think of, like a dirty shower where you've got like that dark stuff on the grout, that's considered like a fungi or a mold. Parasites are organisms that grow, feed, and shelter on or in living organisms. Human can acquire internal parasites from fish, meat that has not been properly prepared. External parasites that affect humans are on the skin are like ticks or lice. So if you think of, getting an internal infection like a parasite infection from not cooking your meat properly, you get it in your stomach, you have to take antibiotics to deal with it, or an external parasite such as a tick or fleas and lice. It's external, but you still need to deal with it so that it doesn't progress and make things worse. Obviously, as we know, ticks, Lyme disease it could be an option, and nobody wants to have to deal with lice, obviously. So what is immunity? So immunity is the ability of the body to destroy, resist, and recognize infection. Immunity against disease can be either natural or acquired and is a sign of good health. A strong immune system is what helps guard us from, getting things like the common cold, the flu, things like that. So, a healthy diet, a healthy lifestyle actually is good to help your immunity. So natural immunity is partly inherited and partly developed through healthy living. And acquired immunity is immunity that the body develops after overcoming a disease or with an inoculation or exposure to natural allergens. So acquired immunity would be, say, when you get the chicken pox when you're a kid. You get the chicken pox, then you don't get it again because now your body has acquired an immunity to it, or you've had an inoculation to it, versus natural immunity being that, you don't get the common cold, you don't get the flu every year because your natural immunity is very good. Prevent the spread of disease. So proper infection control requires 2 steps, cleaning and disinfecting. Number 1, cleaning, again, is the mechanical process of cleaning all visible dirt and debris from tools, implements, and equipment by washing with liquid soap and water. The surface must be properly cleaned before it can be disinfected. So you can't disinfect a surface that is still covered with, as an example, let's use clippers. So if you've just used your clippers on a client and it still has all the little hairs, maybe a little bit of, if they have any like dandruff or anything like that, and all of that is still embedded in the blades or on the clipper, if you do not clean that off and spray it with the disinfecting spray, it's not going to kill anything that's on there. It's not going to sanitize, it's not going to disinfect it. So the surface has to be cleaned first, before it can be disinfected. So you've got to get all the hair and everything off of it and clean everything really well to be able to disinfect it. Disinfection is the process that eliminates most but not necessarily all microorganisms on non-porous surfaces. And it's not effective against spores. Spores isn't something we normally have to deal with in a salon environment. That's more hospital grade issue. Cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. So cleaning is the general remover of debris, dirt, food, feces, blood, saliva. Reduces the amount of organic matter that continues to contributes to the proliferation of bacteria and viruses, and disinfection is reducing the number of microbes on a surface to a very low level, and sterilization is the killing or removal of all microorganisms. Disinfectants and how to choose and use. So the number one thing that you need to know about disinfectants is the contact time. And the contact time means from the time that you put it on the surface, how long it takes to be effective. So they call it the wet time. So when you either use the wipes that we use in the salon, so if you wipe the surface, whether it be your station or your chair, when you use that, it has to stay wet or moist for a certain amount of time to be effective. If it dries really quickly, then it's not doing the job properly. So you have to make sure that you understand what the contact time is for each product that you're using. Efficacy is the effectiveness to which a disinfectant solution kills organisms as per the label. So read the label regarding what it is that you're using, what you're using it on, and is it doing the job that you need it to do. Tips: only use on a pre-cleaned, non-porous surface. So you wouldn't use it on something that it would, absorb into, say, your skin. You would never use disinfectants on your skin. And always dilute the products according to the instructions on the label. As an example, barbicide. We don't use barbicide right out of the jug. We use it in a dilution, and there's a specific dilution that we use for that, and we'll be going over that later in class. Items must remain submerged for 10 minutes unless the label specifies different. On the flip side of that, we don't leave things in there for hours on end. You have it in your 10-15 minutes or whatever the label specifies you need to have it in, and then when it's done, you take it out. Keep an SDS on hand for all the products that you use. We do have an SDS data sheet book in the salon with a sheet on every product that we have in the salon. Most of the disinfectants, they suggest avoiding skin contact. So if necessary, wear gloves or wash your hands immediately after using it. We don't want to be, taking that and touching our eyes or our mouth or anything like that. Getting it on our skin, on our face for sure. And measure it carefully. So that being said, if you're using it in a dilution and it's asking for 2 cups of water versus half a cup of the disinfectant, it's really important that you measure it properly, or it can become very dangerous. It could be dangerous in the environment where it causes a vapor that is dangerous to inhale. It could become dangerous if it has contact with your skin, because your skin is porous. So it's really important to follow the directions properly. Types of disinfectants. So here's a broad look. Type is an alcohol. So there's rubbing alcohol, isopropyl, and ethanol. You can use it on small objects or on your hands, as in hand sanitizer. Hypochlorite, Clorox, contaminant, chloramine T, Hazalone. It's used with water, cleans the surfaces. Iodophers are like betadine, iodine. Think about cleaning things with iodine. That used to be something that was really big years ago. Everything was cleaned with iodine. QAC, quaternary ammonia compounds. These are important because you need to understand what that means. We'll get into that in a little bit later. Phenolic, which is like Lysol, Pine Sol. You can use that, like, people use it, Lysol, to wash the floors, things like that. Oxidizer, which is hydrogen peroxide, we can actually clean surfaces with that. So a lot of the products that we use now, they're actually hydrogen peroxide, because it's not harmful to the environment. We're not using the chemicals that are harmful to the environment, so that's really important. So looking at it in the pyramid shape, we're critical to semi-critical to non-critical. Critical meaning anything in the healthcare industry, be it doctors, dentists, anything that uses things that, cut the skin or in with the skin. Sterilization is the most important and the top level of the cleaning, which means things are washed, disinfected, and then they are sterilized. It's the highest upper tier of making sure things are clean. Semi-critical is a high level of disinfection. We're basically fall between high level and intermediate level of disinfection, because we do deal with the skin, we deal with people at close contact. We have issues with, if we do cut ourselves, things like that. Low level disinfection, that's sort of like making sure everything's wiped down clean, as in AKA the grocery store. They clean the things that you hold on to, the carts, they clean their things, but it's pretty much low level. And I saw this was kind of funny, little just keep cleaning from Dory. At this point, that's pretty much covers everything in a nutshell. We will be going a little bit deeper into infection control as we get a little bit farther along. You'll be doing an online infection control class through the supplier of our the RTU and stuff that we use in the salon for the disinfection. And we'll also be doing a couple other things. I will post your homework in Blackboard for your theory workbook. Otherwise, have a great day. Talk to you soon.